The first sound I heard after death was tape ripping from a cardboard box. Not thunder. Not a hospital monitor. Not the dramatic gasp I used to imagine a reborn heroine would make when fate handed her a second chance. Just tape, stretched tight between my teeth and my hands, making a harsh little tearing sound in the middle of Dormitory C, room 418, at 4:37 on a Monday morning while the rest of the building slept behind doors covered in pastel name tags and fake friendship stickers. My suitcase lay open on my bed. My winter coat was folded inside it. My scholarship certificate, the one the girls had once laughed over before helping destroy me, was wrapped in a hoodie and buried under my textbooks. Across the room, 3 beds sat untouched, covered in pink blankets, expensive sleep masks, and the kind of decorative pillows girls bought when they wanted everyone to know home was rich enough to send comfort ahead of them. On the mirror, someone had written Ice Queen in red lipstick, the letters fat and glossy under the weak desk lamp. In my first life, I had cried when I saw it. I had wiped it away before morning, terrified the residence advisor would blame me for staining university property. This time, I took a photograph, slipped the lipstick into a plastic sandwich bag with my initials on the label, and kept packing. I knew how this week was supposed to end. By Friday afternoon, I was supposed to be standing in front of the student conduct board with my hair still damp from rain, listening to 4 girls explain how frightened they had been living with me. They would use soft voices. Soft voices were their favorite weapons. They would say I had shouted at them when they tried to include me. They would say I stole from them, threatened them, ruined their food, scratched words into the bathroom door, and sent anonymous messages from a burner account. They would produce screenshots, photographs, and 3 matching statements typed in a font so calm it looked official. I would be too exhausted to defend myself properly because they would have iced me all week, locked me out of group notes, hidden my laundry, left my groceries in the hall, whispered until I stopped sleeping, and reported me for every reaction they pushed me into. The board would suspend my housing first, then my scholarship review would begin, then the rumors would outrun the truth. By winter, I would be gone from Halewick University. By spring, my mother would stop answering calls from relatives because everyone had heard I was unstable. By the next summer, I would be working night shifts at a storage warehouse while the girl who had orchestrated it all accepted a leadership award for building inclusive campus culture. 2 years later, I would die on the service road behind that warehouse after a delivery truck slid on black ice. The last thing I saw in my first life was my phone screen lighting up with a post from Dahlia Cross. Be kind. You never know what someone is going through. Dahlia was asleep in the bed by the window when I zipped my suitcase shut. She looked innocent in sleep because most cruel people do. Their faces relax when they are not performing goodness. Her pale blonde hair spilled over a silk pillowcase, and one hand rested outside the blanket with a tiny gold bracelet around her wrist, the same bracelet she would later claim I stole and pawned. Beside her, Mina Vale slept with one arm across her eyes, mouth slightly open, her phone still playing a silent video beside her cheek. Petra Sloane's bed was empty because Petra always spent Sunday nights with her boyfriend in Graduate House, then pretended she had been studying early at the library. The 4th girl, Liana Mercer, was technically not our roommate, but she had become part of our room the way mold becomes part of a wall. She drifted in and out with Dahlia, borrowing clothes, using our shower, eating food she did not buy, and leaving little traces of herself everywhere. In my first life, the board would believe their story because there were 4 of them and 1 of me. That was the oldest mathematics of social cruelty. 4 soft girls with tearful eyes beat one poor scholarship student with a shaking voice every time. I had spent years trying to understand how they made everyone believe them. I understood now. They did not need to be truthful. They only needed to be coordinated. So, I did not confront them. I did not wake them. I did not write a note. I did not slam a drawer for satisfaction, even though part of me wanted the sharp little pleasure of seeing Dahlia open her eyes and realize the game had changed. Instead, I moved like a thief leaving my own life behind. I stripped my bed, photographed the mattress, photographed the underside of the desk, photographed the inside of every drawer, and recorded a slow video of the room from the doorway. I zoomed in on the lipstick on the mirror, the empty wine cooler tucked under Mina's bed, Petra's vape cartridges beside the heater, and the little black camera hidden in the artificial plant on the shared bookshelf. That camera had been my greatest humiliation in the first timeline. They had claimed I installed it to record them changing. I had not even known it existed until campus security walked into our room on Thursday. This time, I knew exactly where it sat, its lens no bigger than a pepper seed between plastic leaves. I did not touch it. I simply filmed it, stepped close enough for the red indicator light to blink against my phone camera, and whispered the date and time. Monday, October 19th. 4:49 YM room 418. Camera present before I vacated. Then I uploaded the video to 3 cloud folders, emailed it to myself, and sent a sealed copy to the residence director with a subject line, "Immediate room transfer due to documented safety concern." The reply came faster than I expected. At 5:06 a.m., while I was dragging my suitcase past the laundry room, my phone buzzed. Residence Director Alma Keene never slept during crisis weeks. Halewick liked to call October midterm resilience season, which meant students cried in stairwells and administrators pretended the problem was time management. Her message was short: "Come to North Desk now. Do not return to room 418. I smiled for the first time since opening my eyes in this life. In my first life, I had tried to be polite, patient, and invisible. I had believed good behavior would protect me. I had believed if I never made trouble, trouble would feel embarrassed and leave me alone. That belief had killed me long before the truck did. This time, I rolled my suitcase through the underground connector, past vending machines glowing blue in the dark, past a poster that said "Community begins with courage," and into the north lobby where Alma Keene stood behind the desk in a gray cardigan, hair clipped up, glasses hanging from a chain. She looked at my suitcase, then at my face, then at the screen where the still image of the hidden camera waited in her inbox. "Avellini," she said quietly, "tell me everything you can tell me without guessing." That was the moment I almost cried. Not because I was weak. Not because I was relieved. Because in my first life, every adult had asked me why I had done it before asking whether I had. The difference between those two questions was the width of a grave. I placed the lipstick bag on the desk. I placed a printed timeline beside it, because I had written one the night before with hands that remembered everything. I listed the ICE campaign before it began. Monday morning, they would stop speaking to me in public. Monday afternoon, they would remove me from the dorm floor group chat. Tuesday, my scholarship notes would disappear from the common printer. Wednesday, a complaint would be filed claiming I threatened Mina over a missing bracelet. Thursday, security would find the camera, the bracelet, and a packet of answer keys in my locked drawer. Friday, the board would hold an emergency hearing before I had time to gather evidence. Alma's face changed only once at the answer keys. Her fingers tightened around her pen. "How do you know that part?" she asked. I looked at the lobby windows, black with pre-dawn, and chose the only answer that did not require explaining Rebirth. Because yesterday I overheard Liana telling Dahlia that if I didn't leave voluntarily, they would make sure I left officially. It was a lie shaped around a truth, and Alma accepted it because good administrators understand that students rarely describe danger perfectly while standing inside it. She called campus safety, then housing operations, then someone from student integrity whose name I recognized from the hearing that had ruined my first life. By 6, I had been placed in a temporary single room in Dormitory A, the oldest building on campus, where the radiator clanged like an angry ghost and the window faced a brick wall. To me, it looked like a palace.
No hidden camera. No sealed pillows.
No girls pretending not to laugh while I entered. No shared fridge where my food could rot mysteriously overnight. I set my suitcase on the bed and stood very still. The room was so quiet that for a few seconds, I could hear my own heartbeat and nothing else. Then my phone began buzzing as the old world realized I had stepped out of its trap. Dahlia sent the first message at 7:12.
"Where are you?"
The second came 7 seconds later. "You left your bed weird." Mina sent, "Did you move my bracelet?" Petra wrote, "LOL, did she actually run away?" Then the dorm C floor group chat lit up. I watched from my new room, wrapped in the cheap university blanket, as the play began without its victim on stage. Dahlia posted a sad little message saying I had stormed out before dawn after creating a hostile environment in the room. Mina added that everyone should give Avelini space because I had been struggling. Petra asked people not to spread rumors while spreading four in one paragraph. Liana, who did not live in the room and therefore should not have known anything, wrote that she had always felt unsafe around certain energy, but had tried to stay compassionate. In my first life, I had typed back too quickly. I had said stop lying. I had said you did this. I had said you're trying to ruin me. Those messages had been screenshotted, cropped, and used as proof that I was aggressive. This time, I did nothing. I let their messages pile up unanswered. Silence, I had learned, could be a blade if you placed it correctly. By 8, my absence had become a performance. Dahlia liked an audience. She walked into the dining hall with red eyes and no breakfast, letting people pull concern out of her like thread. Mina sat beside her, clutching her bare wrist where the bracelet was supposed to be. Petra appeared in lecture, wearing sunglasses indoors. Liana posted a photograph of 4 untouched coffee cups with the caption, "Some mornings hurt more than others." I watched it all from the back row of introductory constitutional theory, where nobody expected me to be because room 418 had told everyone I was taking space. Professor Imani started class with judicial review, but the room kept glancing at me. Whispers traveled faster than law. I opened my laptop and took notes as if my name were not being chewed behind me. Dahlia turned around once from the second row. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Just for half a second. The mask slipped. Confusion first, then calculation, then a wounded little smile, as if she were happy I had found the strength to attend. I smiled back politely. She hated that more than shouting. The first crack came before lunch. Campus safety entered room 418 while Dahlia and Mina were still pretending to be frightened in the dining hall. They did not announce a raid. They called it a welfare and safety inspection related to an emergency transfer request. Alma had warned me that housing staff would document everything but might not move quickly enough to stop the girls from planting evidence. That was why timing mattered. The inspection happened before they knew I had reported the camera. Before Dahlia could remove it. Before Mina could place the bracelet. Before Liana could sneak in with the answer keys. Before Petra could wipe the group chat from the spare tablet she kept in the closet for aesthetic planning, which really meant storing screenshots, fake accounts, and edited photos. Campus safety found the camera where I had filmed it. They found 2 additional microSD cards in Dahlia's desk organizer. They found a roll of red lipstick matching the mirror message in Mina's makeup bag, though the one used on the mirror was already sealed at North Desk with my timestamp. They found a key duplicator hidden under Petra's laundry basket. Most importantly, they found nothing of mine in any place where the girls had planned to discover it later, because I had emptied my side of the room before dawn. At 12:18, Dahlia called me. I let it ring until it stopped. She called again. Mina texted, "This is getting serious. Can you not be dramatic?" Petra wrote, "If you made a report, you need to undo it before people misunderstand." Liana sent one message only. "You should have stayed quiet." That one I screenshotted, backed up, and forwarded to Alma without comment. By then, the floor group chat had shifted tone. People who had sent heart emojis to Dahlia that morning were suddenly asking what was happening in room 418. A sophomore named Kira posted that housing staff had carried out sealed evidence bags. A boy from the floor below said campus safety had asked whether anyone had seen Liana enter dorm C without signing in. Dahlia responded with a long paragraph about false accusations, trauma, and how painful it was when people weaponized institutional systems against women. In my first life, that kind of sentence would have crushed me because it sounded too righteous to challenge. This time, I read it twice and almost admired the craft. Dahlia never defended herself with facts when Fogg would do. Monday ended with an email from Residence Life reminding Dormitory C residents not to tamper with ongoing safety reviews. It did not name anyone, which meant everyone filled in names themselves. That night, I slept 4 uninterrupted hours in Dormitory A, which was 4 more than I had slept during the entire final week of my first campus life. When I woke at 2:30 a.m., I did not panic. My body wanted to. It remembered the old timeline the way skin remembers fire. But I sat up, drank water, and opened the private folder where I had stored every piece of evidence from the first life in my mind and every piece from this one in reality. There was the lipstick video, the hidden camera footage, the message from Liana, screenshots of the group chat, photographs of my clean drawers, the emergency transfer request, the automatic email receipt, the timeline. I arranged them into folders named Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday because revenge was not a feeling anymore. It was administration. On Tuesday morning, Dahlia changed strategies. If silence could not make me look guilty, kindness would. She came to my sociology lecture carrying a paper bag from my favorite bakery, the one she had mocked for being too cheap in my first life before telling everyone I was food insecure and defensive. She waited until half the room was watching, then placed the bag on my desk. "Avellini," she said softly, "I don't know what you think happened, but I'm still your roommate, and I still care about you." It was beautifully done. Her voice trembled at the edges. Her cardigan was cream. Her eyes were wet, but not ruined. Mina stood near the door, like a witness. Petra filmed from behind her laptop, badly pretending not to. I looked at the bag. A chocolate croissant sat inside, glossy and perfect. In the old life, I would have rejected it angrily, and the clip would have gone everywhere. Scholarship girl humiliates kind roommate. This time, I smiled, folded the bag closed, and said, "Thank you. I'll give this directly to Residence Life, since they advised me not to accept anything connected to the review." The professor stopped shuffling papers. Dahlia's fingers twitched. The room inhaled. I picked up the bag with 2 fingers, as if it might leak poison, and set it beside my chair. It was not poisoned, of course. Dahlia was too clever for melodrama. The croissant contained a folded receipt from a pawn shop 3 blocks away, tucked beneath the napkin, with a handwritten note that said, "I can explain the bracelet. Don't ruin me." It was meant to look like mine. If I had opened the bag privately, panicked, and thrown it away, Petra's video would show me accepting evidence. If I kept it, they would say I had been blackmailing Mina about the bracelet. If I confronted Dahlia, they would film the reaction. Instead, Professor Imani called campus safety from the lecture hall phone and asked them to collect an item related to an active housing investigation. The entire room heard her. Dahlia stood frozen beside my desk, her kind smile trapped halfway across her face. Petra lowered her laptop. Mina left before the officers arrived. The croissant became evidence item T3, which sounded absurd until I remembered that my first life had been destroyed by absurd things arranged in serious folders. By Tuesday afternoon, the story had escaped dormitory C and entered the campus bloodstream. Everyone had an opinion, and most of them were wrong. Some said I had found a camera in the shower. Some said Dahlia had been framed by a jealous scholarship student. Some said Liana belonged to a secret cheating ring, which was closer to truth than gossip deserved. The university newspaper messaged me for comment. I did not respond. Dahlia posted nothing for 6 hours, which meant she was either meeting with someone important or rewriting her own history. Mina, less disciplined, posted a close-up of her bare wrist with the caption, "I just want my grandmother's bracelet back." I knew that bracelet. In my first life, I had begged them to search my things properly because I knew I had not taken it. Security had found it inside my locked drawer wrapped in tissue. Nobody asked how I could have stolen it when Mina had worn it to breakfast an hour earlier. Nobody asked why the tissue came from Dahlia's monogrammed stationery set. This time, the bracelet was still missing because they had not had time to plan it. That made Mina reckless. Recklessness makes people useful. I went to the library basement after dinner, not because I needed to study, but because the basement had the oldest security cameras on campus and the narrowest corridors. In my first life, Mina had met Liana there on Tuesday night to hand over the bracelet and the fake key to my desk drawer. I had not known until months later, when a student worker drunkenly mentioned seeing them near the archive room and then refused to testify because Dahlia's father funded his research fellowship. This time, I sat behind the microfilm cabinets with my laptop open and my phone recording in my sleeve. At 8:43, Mina arrived wearing a baseball cap low over her face. Liana came 7 minutes later, carrying a red folder. They whispered beside the outdated printers, exactly where the cameras could see but not hear them.
I did not need sound.
Mina pulled the gold bracelet from her own coat pocket. Liana handed her something small and metallic.
A key.
Mina started crying before the exchange was even finished, angry tears, not guilty ones. She ruined everything by leaving. She hissed loud enough for my phone to catch. Dahlia said she would stay until Friday. Dahlia promised she always stays when people freeze her out. Liana answered, then we adjust. Put it in her new room if you have to. My hand tightened around the phone. There it was. Not the whole truth, but enough to make the truth easier to believe. I left before they saw me and sent the file to Alma and campus integrity from a study room upstairs. Then I walked across campus under trees, shedding yellow leaves onto the paths, feeling a strange calm I did not trust. Revenge in stories always burns hot. Mine felt cold and practical, like washing blood from tile. I did not want them merely humiliated. I wanted the machinery that had protected them to jam in public, loudly enough that nobody could pretend not to hear. That meant staying clean.
No shouting. No threats.
No secret meetings without recording. No accepting food. No touching evidence. No giving them a single messy emotion they could fold into a weapon. When Dahlia texted me at 10:02 saying, "We can fix this if you stop acting like everyone is your enemy," I typed nothing. When Petra sent a voice note sobbing that I was destroying their mental health, I saved it and typed nothing. When Mina wrote, "You don't know what Dahlia can do," I finally replied with one sentence, "Please direct all concerns to residence life." Then I turned off notifications and slept. Wednesday was the day the ICE campaign was supposed to become official. In the first timeline, by Wednesday morning nobody would sit with me. People would stop mid-conversation when I approached. Someone would spill coffee on my chair in the common room and laugh, as if it were an accident. My class group would remove my name from the presentation slides 15 minutes before seminar, then claim I had refused to contribute. This time, the coldness came differently. People watched me, but they did not step too close to Dahlia either. Suspicion is contagious once it finds a door. The girls tried to continue the old choreography, but without my panic feeding it, the performance looked strange. Dahlia sat alone at breakfast with her untouched oatmeal and wounded eyes. Mina whispered fiercely into her phone near the juice machine. Petra posted inspirational quotes about surviving betrayal, then deleted them when comments turned sharp. Liana did not appear on campus until noon, when she arrived at the student union with a lawyer who looked annoyed to be there. The university sent me a formal notice at 1:15 p.m. requesting my presence at a preliminary review meeting Thursday morning. My hands shook when I saw the subject line because trauma does not care that you are winning. It reads official language and remembers the first verdict. I opened the attachment slowly. This time, the wording was different. I was not being summoned as a respondent. I was being invited as a reporting party and witness. Four names appeared under review: Dahlia Cross, Mina Vale, Petra Sloan, and Liana Mercer. Allegations included unauthorized surveillance, evidence fabrication, harassment, housing access violations, retaliation, and potential academic integrity breaches. The phrase potential academic integrity breaches made my stomach turn. That was the part even the girls did not know had been waiting for them. In my first life, the fake answer keys planted in my drawer had triggered a broader investigation. To save themselves, they had claimed I created the keys and offered them to students in exchange for money. But those keys had not come from nowhere. Liana had stolen them from a test prep archive connected to her aunt's private tutoring company. The university had never followed the trail because blaming me was easier. This time, they had the trail before they had the planted evidence. At 3 o'clock, Professor Imani asked me to stay after lecture. I braced myself, but she only closed the door and said, "I have seen social executions before. They are usually dressed up as concern." I did not know what to say. She pulled a folder from her bag and placed it on the desk. Inside were copies of my past assignments, marked with comments about clarity, discipline, and original analysis. "If anyone asks whether you are volatile, dishonest, or academically careless," she said, "they may ask me too." That kindness hurt more than cruelty because I had not prepared for it. In my first life, Nobody with a title had stood beside me until it was safe to pity me. I thanked her without crying, though it was close. She smiled once, tiredly. "Do not let them push you into becoming the person their story requires," she said. I carried that sentence back to dormitory, like a second-room key. Wednesday night, Dahlia made her boldest move. She held a community circle in the dorm C lounge without calling it a meeting about me. The invitation said residents needed space to process the week's tension and recommit to care. In my first life, that circle had become a trial where girls I barely knew shared how my energy made them uncomfortable. Their words had followed me into the board, hearing like smoke. This time, I did not attend. I watched through 3 different recordings sent by students who had begun to understand that history was turning. Dahlia sat in the center on a blue cushion, speaking gently about fear, compassion, and the pain of being accused by someone you had tried to help.
Mina querida.
Petra passed tissues. Liana stood near the door with crossed arms. Then Kira, the sophomore from down the hall, raised her hand and asked, "Why was there a camera in your room before Avellini moved out?" The lounge went so quiet that the recording picked up the vending machine humming in the hall. Dahlia blinked. "That is part of an ongoing review," she said. Kira asked, "Were you aware of it?" Dahlia's face shifted into injured confusion. "Of course not." Then another girl, Tamsin, said, "But you told me last month you were filming your side of the room, because Avellini was probably stealing vibes." "I thought you were joking." The phrase was ridiculous. The silence after it was not. By midnight, the community circle had become campus legend. Not because the truth had fully emerged, but because Dahlia had looked foolish for the first time. Cruel people can survive being hated. They struggle with being laughed at. Screenshots of stealing vibes moved through private chats. Someone made a meme of a security camera wearing a friendship bracelet. Mina posted that making jokes about trauma was disgusting, which only made people ask what the trauma was. Petra deleted her account for 90 minutes and returned with a black square. Liana, less interested in optics, sent me another message. "You think you are safe because you moved buildings." I forwarded it. Then I sat on the floor of my single room, surrounded by printed documents, and let myself remember the old Friday. The hearing room. The panel's polished table. Dahlia's trembling testimony. Mina saying, "I forgive her, but I don't feel safe." Petra whispering, "She needs help." Liana presenting screenshots from a burner account she had created herself. Me begging, voice breaking, while the panel chair looked at me with the exhausted pity adults reserve for inconvenient girls. That memory had lived in my bones. Now, for the first time, it began to loosen. Thursday arrived with rain. It tapped against the narrow window of dormitory while I dressed in black trousers, a white blouse, and the blazer I had worn to scholarship interviews before I learned that achievement does not protect you from envy. I pinned my hair back. I printed 3 copies of my timeline. I placed my phone, charger, student ID, and evidence drive into a clear pouch. Then I walked to the administration building without an umbrella. The rain made everything smell metallic and alive. Students watched from covered walkways as I crossed the quad. Some whispered. Some looked away. One girl I did not know gave me a tiny thumbs up from under her hood, then seemed embarrassed by her own courage. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because humans are strange. A week ago in both lives, they had been ready to freeze me out because powerful girls told them the room was cold. Now they were warming their hands near my survival. The preliminary review took place in Conference Room 2B, the same room where my first life's campus death sentence had been drafted. The table was oval. The water pitcher had lemon slices floating in it. The walls displayed framed photographs of smiling alumni who had probably never hidden evidence in a croissant. Alma sat to my left. Professor Imani sat behind me as support. Across the table were 3 administrators, 1 campus safety officer, and a woman from legal counsel whose face revealed nothing. Dahlia arrived in navy, Mina in pale blue, Petra in gray, and Liana in a black suit too formal for a student meeting. They looked coordinated, of course. Even under investigation, they understood color. Dahlia's eyes flicked to Professor Imani behind me, then to the clear pouch on the table, then to my face. For the first time all week, she did not smile. The panel chair began with rules.
No interruptions. No retaliation.
Evidence would be reviewed in sequence. Each student could respond. The criminal matters, if any, would be referred externally. Dahlia folded her hands.
Mina sniffed.
Petra stared at the table. Liana's lawyer asked whether his client was required to answer questions that might expose her to academic or legal consequences. The legal counsel smiled the way knives smile in expensive kitchens and said, "No student is required to make a statement. The university is also not required to ignore documentary evidence." That was when I knew the week had turned past the point Dahlia could control. In my first life, the panel had looked at me as a problem. This time, they looked at the girls as liability. They started with the camera. Campus safety displayed photographs of the artificial plant, the device inside it, the memory cards, and timestamps showing recordings of the room from angles that included my bed and desk. Dahlia said she had never seen it before. Mina said she thought it was part of Petra's content equipment. Petra said it belonged to Dahlia because Dahlia bought the plant. Liana said nothing. Then the officer played a clip from 3 weeks earlier. In it, Dahlia's own voice drifted from off-camera, laughing. "If she touches anything, we'll know. Scholarship girls are always so careful until they think nobody sees." Mina's face strained. Petra closed her eyes. Dahlia stared at the screen as if betrayal were the machine's fault. The room heard my first life cracking open in reverse. Next came the lipstick, the mirror photograph, my sealed evidence bag, the matching cosmetic found in Mina's makeup bag. Mina cried that lots of people used red lipstick. Alma agreed calmly, then placed beside it the video from the hallway outside room 418 at 1:23 a.m. Monday. Mina, barefoot, entering the room while holding something red. Mina leaving 4 minutes later without it. Mina whispered, "Dahlia told me it was just a joke." Dahlia turned her head slowly. I did not. The softness was gone now. Their alliance had survived cruelty, but not exposure. Petra looked between them as if calculating which sinking boat had more room. Then came the croissant receipt. Petra's laptop recording from lecture had been recovered because she submitted it voluntarily, thinking it showed me refusing Dahlia's kindness. Instead, it showed Dahlia placing the bag on my desk, me refusing to open it privately, and Professor Imani calling security. The pawn shop receipt inside connected to Mina's bracelet, which, according to transaction records obtained after Mina reported it stolen, had never been pawned at all. The receipt was fabricated using a template from a campus printer. Printer logs showed Liana's student account had printed it Monday night. Liana's lawyer asked for a pause. The panel denied it until the evidence sequence finished. Liana's jaw tightened. Dahlia's eyes went bright with anger. She had planned to sacrifice me. She had not planned to be sacrificed by the same paperwork. The library video ended them socially before the academic evidence ended them officially. Watching Mina pull the bracelet from her own pocket was almost too simple. No dramatic confession, no villain monologue, just a girl producing the object she had spent 2 days mourning online. The audio captured her blaming Dahlia for promising I would stay until Friday. The panel replayed that sentence twice. Dahlia said, "Mina was emotional and confused." Mina snapped, "You told me exactly where to put it." Petra whispered, "Don't." Dahlia turned on her. "You filmed everything." Petra's mouth opened, then shut. For a second, I saw them as they were. Not a sisterhood, not victims, not campus angels, but 4 frightened people tied together by the same rope they had meant for my neck. I should have felt triumphant. I felt focused. Triumph could wait until Friday. Because Thursday's Real strike was not the bracelet. It was the answer keys. The panel displayed access logs from the tutoring company archive where restricted practice materials had been stored. Liana's aunt owned the company. Liana had used an administrator login 3 times in the past month, downloading sealed answer sets for examinations used by multiple scholarship prep courses. In my first life, photocopies of those answer sets appeared in my drawer. This time, the drawer was empty because I had moved out, but the digital trail remained. Liana finally spoke. Those materials were for private study. The legal counsel asked, Then why did you create a folder titled Avellini Insurance? The room became colder than any dorm ice campaign. On the screen appeared a directory structure recovered from Liana's tablet. Room evidence, chat screens, Avellini Insurance, Friday board script. I stared at those words until they blurred. Friday board script. They had not only planned to accuse me, they had rehearsed my ruin like a school play. The panel chair called a recess. Dahlia stood too quickly, knocking her chair backward. For one wild second I thought she might lunge across the table, but she only walked to the window and pressed both hands against the glass. Rain ran down outside, turning her reflection into something broken. Mina sobbed into her sleeve. Petra whispered to Liana, who ignored her. I sat still. Professor Imani leaned forward and said quietly, "Breathe." I did. In for 4. Out for 6. Again. My hands were shaking under the table, hidden by my blazer sleeves. Nobody saw. That mattered to me then, maybe more than it should have. I did not want them to see what they had done still living in my body. When the panel returned, the tone had changed from investigation to containment. Interim measures were issued immediately. Dahlia, Mina, Petra, and Liana were removed from dormitory C pending final conduct decisions. No contact orders were placed. Their access cards were suspended except for supervised retrieval of essentials. Liana was suspended from student leadership and referred to academic integrity for unauthorized possession and intended distribution of restricted materials. Dahlia was referred for harassment, surveillance, retaliation, conspiracy to fabricate evidence, and misuse of residence systems, because her father's donor status had apparently not erased keycard logs. Mina was referred for false theft claims and evidence fabrication. Petra was referred for recording policy violations, possession of unauthorized room access tools, and participation in the planned complaint. The final hearing was scheduled for Friday morning. Friday, the day I had once been destroyed. Friday, the day the old story expected me to disappear. I looked at the calendar invite on my phone and felt something inside me go very still. That evening, campus split open. The university did not name them in the interim notice, but students are detectives when drama feeds them. By dinner, everyone knew the 4 girls from room 418 had been escorted to temporary holding rooms in the conference wing until parents or guardians could collect them. Dahlia's father arrived in a black car and walked through the north entrance, without looking at anyone. Mina's mother screamed at the resident's desk until Alma threatened to call security. Petra's boyfriend posted that people should stop believing rumors, then deleted it after someone replied with a still from the library video. Liana's aunt's tutoring company quietly removed its staff page from the website. My own phone filled with messages from people who had ignored me all week. Are you okay? I always thought something was off. I'm sorry if I seemed distant. Dahlia manipulated everyone.
I did not answer most of them.
Forgiveness given too quickly becomes another room people expect you to clean. But one message mattered. It came from my mother at 8:11 p.m. In my first life, I had hidden everything from her until the suspension notice arrived because I was ashamed to be in trouble for things I had not done. Shame is strange like that. It does not ask whether you are guilty before moving in. This time, I had told her on Monday that there was a housing issue, nothing more, because I needed to control the facts before fear carried them. Her message said, Alma Keen called me. She said you are safe and brave, and that I should be proud. I am already proud. Call when you can breathe. I sat on the floor beside the radiator and cried then, finally, quietly enough that the old walls kept my secret. I cried for the girl in the first life who had thought losing housing meant losing home. I cried for the warehouse road, the black ice, the phone glowing with Dahlia's fake kindness. I cried because my mother had been proud in both lives, but only in this one had I survived long enough to know it. Friday morning did not dawn dramatically.
No storm. No omen.
No cinematic beam of sunlight across the administration building. It was gray, damp, and ordinary, which made it worse for them. Extraordinary punishments are easier to romanticize. Ordinary consequences feel more final. I arrived 10 minutes early and sat in the waiting area with Professor Imani on one side and Alma on the other. Dahlia arrived with her father and a private attorney. Mina arrived with swollen eyes and her mother gripping her elbow. Petra came alone, which told me enough about loyalty. Liana came with the same annoyed lawyer, though he looked less annoyed now and more concerned about billing. Nobody spoke to me. That was a new kind of silence. Not ice. Distance from heat. The final conduct hearing lasted 4 hours. Big paragraphs cannot capture every question, every exhibit, every tiny collapse of confidence, but I remember the rhythm. Dahlia began by denying coordination. Then the panel displayed the Friday board script, which included suggested statements for Mina and Petra and bullet points on how to describe me as unstable without sounding discriminatory. Mina admitted writing the mirror message, but claimed she had been pressured. Petra admitted recording me and editing clips, but claimed Dahlia told her it was documentation for safety. Liana admitted accessing restricted materials, but denied intent to plant them until the panel showed a message from her to Dahlia. If she moves rooms, we need another route. The answer keys only work if they're found in her possession. Dahlia's attorney objected to context. The panel chair said the context was the hearing.
I almost smiled at that.
Sometimes justice is not poetic. Sometimes it is a tired administrator refusing to let a rich girl's lawyer interrupt. By noon, the girls were no longer aligned. Mina said Dahlia designed the plan because she hated that I had won the Eastmere scholarship. Petra said Dahlia wanted my room space, my scholarship mentor, and my place on the first-year honors committee. Liana said Dahlia promised her access to Dahlia's father's legal network if she helped solve the Avellini problem. Dahlia denied everything until the panel played audio from Petra's tablet, a recording Petra had apparently kept as insurance against Dahlia herself. In it, Dahlia's voice said, clear as glass, by Friday, she won't have housing, and once the scholarship office hears about the keys, she won't have tuition either. People like her only stay if everyone keeps pretending they belong. The words did not shock me. I had lived their consequences. But hearing them in that room, hearing adults hear them, changed the air. Dahlia closed her eyes. Her father looked at the table.
Mina made a sound like she had been slapped.
Petra stared at me for the first time with something that might have been apology, or fear wearing apologies clothes. The panel asked me whether I wanted to make a statement. In my first life, my statement had been a disaster, too emotional, too pleading, too full of details nobody had organized. I had tried to prove my innocence by offering my pain. Pain is not evidence. This time, I unfolded one sheet of paper.
One. Not a speech.
Not a plea. I moved out because I was unsafe, I said. I documented the room because I knew I would not be believed without records. I did not install the camera. I did not steal Mina's bracelet. I did not create or possess answer keys. I did not threaten my roommates. I did not ask anyone to choose sides. The evidence shows that a group of students planned to isolate me, fabricate misconduct, and use university systems to remove me from housing and threaten my scholarship. I am asking the university to treat that as seriously as it would have treated the accusations if they had succeeded. I stopped there. The room waited, expecting more. There was no more. I had learned not to decorate the truth until people forgot its shape. At 2:17 p.m., the panel returned its findings. Dahlia Cross, responsible on all major counts. Expulsion from university housing, suspension from Halewick University for a minimum of 2 academic years, permanent removal from student leadership, notation to scholarship and conduct records, and referral to law enforcement for unlawful recording and evidence fabrication. Mina Vale, responsible for harassment, false reporting, and fabrication, suspended for 1 academic year and removed from housing, with her theft complaint formally withdrawn and corrected. Petra Sloan, responsible for recording violations, participation in harassment, possession of access tools, and evidence manipulation, suspended for 1 academic year, housing revoked. Liana Mercer, responsible for unauthorized access to restricted academic materials, conspiracy to plant evidence, retaliation, and housing access violations, expelled from Halewick University, barred from campus, and referred to external authorities and affected testing partners. For girls who had planned to make me homeless by Friday were, by Friday, carrying supervised boxes out of the buildings they thought belonged to them. The expulsions did not look like I expected. In stories, villains scream. In real life, they bargain, cry, threaten appeals, ask whether records can be sealed, and suddenly remember anxiety diagnoses they once mocked in others. Dahlia's father stood first and said the family would be considering legal options. Alma said they had that right. Mina's mother shouted that her daughter had been manipulated. The panel chair said manipulation did not erase conduct. Petra asked if she could say goodbye to people on her floor. Campus safety said no. Liana said nothing at all, which frightened me more than her threats had. She only looked at me once, as if still trying to solve me. I let her look. I had spent a whole life being studied by girls who wanted to know where to cut. Now they could see the scar tissue and still not find an opening. The walk back to dormitory, was voluntary. Alma told me I did not have to come. My belongings were safe in dormitory. Housing could arrange staff to collect anything left behind. But I wanted to see room 418 once after the spell broke. Not because I missed it, because rooms remember what people do inside them, and I needed mine to remember me leaving on my own terms. The hallway was crowded when campus safety escorted the girls through with boxes. Dahlia carried one small suitcase and a garment bag. She looked smaller without her room, without her audience, without Mina and Petra flanking her in matching outrage. Students watched from doorways. Nobody spoke. That silence was not cruelty either. It was witness.
Mina cried openly.
Petra kept her head down. Liana was escorted separately from another entrance, banned from returning even for belongings until external review. When Dahlia passed me, she stopped just long enough to whisper, "You planned this." I looked at her cream cardigan, damp at the cuffs from rain, and said quietly, "No. I survived it early." Her mouth tightened because there was no good reply. Room 418 smelled like stale perfume and panic. The lipstick had been cleaned from the mirror, but a faint red shadow remained in the corner of the glass. The artificial plant was gone, leaving a clean square in the dust. Dahlia's bed was stripped. Mina's desk drawers hung open. Petra's decorative lights sagged unplugged along the wall. My side of the room was empty because I had made it empty before they could fill it with lies. I stood in the doorway and remembered the girl I had been Monday morning in my first life, scared, sleep-deprived, trying to earn warmth from people who had built winter around her. I wanted to tell her she was not stupid. Trusting people does not make you stupid. Staying too long in a burning house does not mean you lit the match. It means somebody convinced you smoke was normal. By Friday evening, official emails reached the campus. The university announced disciplinary action involving severe residence and academic integrity violations. It did not name the girls, but their absence did. Their ID photos vanished from leadership boards. Dahlia's inclusive campus culture nomination disappeared from the awards page. Liana's tutoring company partnership was suspended pending review. Mina's bracelet post was gone. Petra's black square was gone too, along with every video she had made about soft dorm life in room 418. My scholarship office sent a separate message confirming my funding was secure and offering academic accommodations for disruption. I declined extensions I did not need and accepted counseling I did. Survival is not proven by refusing help. That was another lie my first life had taught me. There was one more trap hidden under the week, and I only found it because Petra broke before Dahlia did. On the Monday after the expulsions, a plain envelope appeared under my door in dormitory A while I was brushing my teeth. There was no name on it, no apology, no dramatic confession written in perfume-scented ink. Inside was a flash drive shaped like a pink strawberry and a note in Petra's rushed handwriting. She kept backups. "I am not asking you to forgive me. I am telling you where to look before she says you edited everything." I stared at the note for a long time because part of me hated that even now, one of them could still reach into my morning and change its shape. I took the flash drive to Alma without plugging it into my laptop. The university's IT security office imaged it in a clean machine while I sat behind glass watching a progress bar crawl across the screen. It contained folders from Dahlia's cloud account, downloaded by Petra days before the hearing because betrayal, among girls like them, was never an accident. It was an insurance policy. There were edited screenshots of messages I had never sent, draft statements for students who did not know their names had been placed under them, cropped videos of me walking through hallways with captions suggesting I was stalking the room, and a spreadsheet labeled response map. The spreadsheet listed every possible reaction I might have had and how to turn it against me. If Avellini cries, unstable. If Avellini refuses meeting, avoidant/guilty. If Avellini reports first, weaponizing policy. If Avellini moves rooms, abandoning mediation. If Avellini stays, continued threat. I read those lines once and felt the old timeline exhale behind me. There had never been a correct way to survive inside the story they wrote. That knowledge freed me more than any sanction did. The flash drive changed the university's posture from disciplinary to institutional. Up until then, the administration could pretend 4 students had committed misconduct, and the system had responded properly once notified. After the response map, they had to admit something uglier. The girls had studied the university's own care language, conduct procedures, and bias response pathways well enough to turn them into a machine. Dahlia had not simply lied. She had learned which words made adults hesitate.
Harm.
Safety. Energy.
Trauma.
Exclusion. She placed those words around me like wet cement and waited for them to harden. The dean of students called me into her office 2 days after the flash drive was processed. Dean Armitage was a small woman with silver hair and a voice so controlled it made apologies sound like policy updates. She said the university was reviewing how emergency complaints were triaged, how group allegations were weighed, and how scholarship students could access advocates before housing matters escalated. I listened, hands folded, while she carefully avoided saying, "In another world, we failed you." Of course, she did not know about the other world. Still, I heard it between every sentence. When she asked what would restore my sense of safety, I almost laughed. Safety is not a vase you glue back together and place on a shelf. I said I wanted written confirmation that no complaint from room 418 would remain in my record, access to all evidence used in the proceedings, an independent housing advisor for scholarship students, and a guarantee that no donor or parent could contact my academic departments about me. Dean Armitage wrote each request down. For once, nobody told me I was asking for too much. Dahlia's family did not disappear quietly. People like the Crosses think silence is something they purchase after noise stops serving them. On the second week after the hearing, a blog nobody on campus had heard of published an article titled, "When Campus Discipline Becomes a Weapon, the Untold Story of a Promising Student Destroyed by Rumor." It did not name me, but it described me clearly enough. A scholarship student from a modest background, a dorm conflict, a powerful false narrative, a gifted young woman's future derailed. The gifted young woman was Dahlia, naturally. The article used a photograph of her from the previous year's leadership gala, all candlelight and soft hair, and said she had been denied due process after a roommate's unverified claims triggered institutional panic. For 30 minutes, my hands went cold. In my first life, public narrative had crushed me faster than formal discipline. I imagined the articles spreading, imagined comment sections, imagined relatives calling my mother again. Then I opened the evidence folder called Alma and sent the link to Dean Armitage. By evening, the university's legal office had issued a precise statement correcting material inaccuracies without naming student records. The blog removed the piece the next morning. But before it vanished, students had already found the author, a public relations consultant who had previously worked for Dahlia's father's firm. The attempted rescue became another scandal. For the first time, I understood that exposure has momentum. Once a mask slips far enough, every hand trying to pull it back into place only shows more of the face underneath. Mina tried a different route. She requested a restorative justice meeting with me. The email came through the official conduct office, carefully worded and full of phrases about accountability, healing, dialogue, and moving forward. I sat with it for an entire afternoon. The old me would have agreed because refusing would feel mean, and mean was the one word girls like Mina knew how to place on women who protected themselves. I imagined sitting across from her while she cried prettily and said Dahlia pressured her, while some facilitator encouraged me to name my pain in a way that made Mina feel brave for witnessing it. I imagined being thanked for my vulnerability. I imagined leaving with nothing but exhaustion and another person's relief in my hands. I wrote back, I am not available for restorative process at this time. I wish her growth, but I will not participate in it. The conduct officer replied with one sentence, your boundary is noted and respected. I read that sentence 3 times. Boundaries in my first life had been treated as symptoms. Here, typed in black letters on a university email, one was treated as enough. Petra's apology came through Professor Imani, which at least proved she had learned not to contact me directly. It was 4 pages long, handwritten, full of shame, explanation, and fear. She wrote that Dahlia had first asked her to film for protection, then slowly taught her to collect moments before meaning formed around them. A frown became hostility. A closed door became secrecy. A missed dinner became rejection. By the time I realized we were not documenting danger but manufacturing it, Petra wrote, I had already done enough wrong that telling the truth meant becoming guilty too. I did not forgive her when I read it, but I believed that sentence. Guilt is a room with a sticky floor. The longer you stand there, the harder it feels to leave. She had stayed until consequences pulled her out. That did not absolve her. It explained the shape of her cowardice. I placed the letter in my evidence box, not because I wanted to reread it, but because someday, if memory softened too much, I wanted proof that apology had arrived only after safety did. The hardest part was not the hearing or the gossip or even seeing Dahlia escorted out. The hardest part was learning how to live without preparing for attack every minute. My new room was quiet, but quiet can sound suspicious when you have been trained to hear footsteps as warnings. I checked the plan on my windowsill for cameras even though I had bought it myself. I photographed my desk every night for 2 weeks. I kept receipts for coffee, laundry, printer use, library books, everything, as if some future panel might demand proof that I existed harmlessly. Nor noticed first. She did not tell me to relax, which is what people say when they want your nervous system to perform normality for their comfort. She simply started studying beside me in the lounge twice a week. We worked for 50 minutes, took 10-minute breaks, and talked about nothing sharp. Cafeteria soup, bad campus Wi-Fi, her brother's terrible haircut, whether the library chairs were designed by someone who hated spines. Slowly, my body learned that people could sit near me without collecting evidence. That was not a dramatic victory. It was better. It was ordinary. In late November, the scholarship office asked whether I would speak privately to the advisory committee about the housing incident and its effect on low-income students. I almost refused. I was tired of being a case study, tired of turning bruises into bullet points for people with catered lunches. But Professor Imani said, you can decline. And if you accept, you can speak as a person, not a symbol. So I went. The committee expected a polished speech about resilience. I gave them a list. Scholarship students often cannot risk reporting roommate harassment because housing is tied to funding. Students without family money cannot simply move off campus while investigations unfold. Group accusations carry unequal weight when one student lacks social capital. Donor families should not be able to enter residence disputes through side doors. Emergency transfers should not require a student to prove danger after the danger has already been staged. By the time I finished, the room was uncomfortable in the productive way rooms become when politeness loses its chair. One committee member asked if I felt the university had ultimately protected me. I said, this time yes. He frowned slightly at this time, and I let him. Some truths are allowed to sound strange. The policy changes came quietly at the end of the semester. New emergency transfer rules. Evidence preservation protocols. Mandatory review when multiple students submit coordinated statements against a single roommate. Restrictions on private recording devices in residence rooms, with automatic conduct escalation. Independent advocates for students whose housing, scholarship, and academic standing were all at risk in the same complaint. Nobody put my name on the policy, which I preferred. I did not need a plaque. I needed the next girl to move rooms without begging. Still, when Alma sent me the final document with a note that said, "You changed this place," I sat for a long time looking at the attachment. In my first life, Hailwick had changed me by breaking me. In this one, I had forced it to change back. Dahlia's final message arrived through the appeal record, not directly. She had written a personal statement asking for reinstatement after her suspension period, and because I was the harmed party in several findings, I was allowed to submit impact comments. Her statement was elegant. Of course it was. Dahlia wrote about immaturity, pressure, misunderstanding, the danger of social conflict escalating beyond intention. She did not mention the camera in any real way. She called it the device. She did not mention the response map. She called it private notes written in distress. She did not mention the Friday board script. She called it a hypothetical outline. Reading it, I felt no rage. That surprised me. Rage had been useful, but it had not followed me forever. What I felt was recognition. Dahlia still believed language could polish a blade until everyone complimented the shine and ignored the blood. My impact statement was shorter than hers. I wrote, "Reinstatement should require demonstrated accountability for planned, coordinated harm, not merely regret over discovered consequences. The conduct record shows intent, preparation, escalation, and retaliation. I oppose early reinstatement." It was enough. Her request was denied. On the last day before winter break, I went back to dormitory C one final time to return a borrowed library umbrella someone had left in the lounge. Room 418 had new residents by then, 2 exchange students who decorated the door with paper cranes and a cartoon frog saying, "Please knock. We might be napping." I stood outside for only a moment. The hallway smelled like instant noodles and floor cleaner. Someone laughed behind a door. Someone's music thumped softly upstairs. Life had covered the scene quickly, as life does, not out of disrespect, but because buildings cannot mourn every version of every person they nearly swallowed. I touched the strap of my bag, thought of the suitcase at 4:37 a.m., the tape between my teeth, the lipstick shining on the mirror, and whispered goodbye to the girl who had packed before anyone understood she was saving herself. Then I walked away before nostalgia could lie to me. The weekend after they left, Dormitory C became friendly in the awkward way people become friendly when guilt has nowhere else to sit. Girls held doors for me. Someone left tea outside my new temporary room with a note that said, "No pressure, just warmth." Kira asked if I wanted to join a study group and quickly added that I could say no. Professor Imani emailed an article about institutional betrayal and wrote, "For when you are ready." Alma checked in twice, always with practical questions, never pity. My mother arrived Sunday with homemade soup in jars, looked around dormitory A, and said the room had terrible light. Then she hugged me so fiercely one jar cracked in the bag. I laughed while crying, which felt like a ridiculous but honest thing for a living girl to do. The university appeal process stretched into winter because consequences always have paperwork tails. Dahlia appealed on procedural grounds and lost. Mina tried to reframe herself as a whistleblower and was reminded that whistleblowers do not usually hide stolen bracelets in their own pockets. Petra cooperated and had one sanction reduced from suspension to probation after a semester, but her housing ban stayed. Liana's case became larger than Hailwick when testing partners discovered other restricted materials had moved through the tutoring company archive. Her aunt's business collapsed under audits, refunds, and the kind of public statement that uses words like regret while lawyers stand nearby. I watched from a distance, not with obsession, with documentation. There is a difference. Obsession keeps the wound open. Documentation keeps people from calling the wound imaginary. There was also the matter of the old group chat, the one that had made the whole floor feel like a locked room where everyone except me held a key. After the sanctions, Kira showed me screenshots from the private chat Dahlia had created 3 weeks before my transfer. Its name was 418 Wellness, which would have been funny if it had not been so vicious. The messages began small. Dahlia asking whether anyone else had noticed I was withdrawing. Mina saying my thrift store coat made the room smell like rain. Petra sharing a photo of my desk and asking whether it was normal to stack library books by topic. Girls who barely knew me added little laughing reactions because cruelty is easier when it arrives dressed as observation. Then the chat sharpened. Dahlia asked who would be willing to say I made them uncomfortable. Someone suggested reporting me anonymously. Someone else asked whether it was fair if I lost my scholarship over roommate drama. And Dahlia replied, fairness is making sure dangerous people don't get protected by sad backstories. I read that line until my eyes hurt. In my first life, I had wasted months wondering how ordinary classmates became witnesses against me. Here is the answer. They had been warmed slowly, like water around a frog, until accusing me felt like joining a moral cause instead of a mob. I did not ask Kira why she had stayed in the chat.
She told me anyway.
I thought leaving would make me next, she said. That confession did not make her brave. It made her honest, and honesty was where bravery sometimes began. We submitted the chat to the university, not to punish every frightened bystander, but to show how the ice formed. Several students received warnings for participating in harassment. A few wrote apologies. Most avoided my eyes for the rest of term, which suited me better than sudden friendship. But the chat changed one important thing. The university added bystander conduct training to residence orientation, not the childish kind with cartoons and slogans, but a real session on screenshots, pile-ons, soft bullying, and the way concern can become a weapon when nobody asks the targeted person what is true. Alma asked whether she could use anonymized pieces of my case in training. I said yes on one condition. Do not turn me into a perfect victim. Tell them I was angry. Tell them I was scared. Tell them I ignored messages, kept evidence, and refused meetings. Tell them victims are allowed to be strategic, not just wounded. Alma nodded like she understood. Months later, when I saw the training slide titled Targeted Students May Protect Themselves in Ways That Look Distant, Guarded, or Cold, I felt a strange satisfaction. Somewhere, some future Dahlia would find the room less obedient. That winter break, I visited the warehouse where I had died in the first life. I did not tell my mother. She would have thought the trip was grief dressed as curiosity, and maybe it was. The service road behind the loading bays had been repaved. Trucks moved through in slow lines, their reverse alarms beeping through the cold air. No memorial marked the place because in this life, nothing had happened there. No one had found a scholarship girl bleeding under dirty snow. No manager had called my emergency contact. No phone had lit up beside my hand with Dahlia's kindness post. I stood by the fence in my university coat, breathing steam into the afternoon, and understood something I had avoided. Survival did not erase death. It only gave me a life around it. I could not save the girl who had died there by pretending she never existed. I could save her by refusing to live like her silence was still required. Before I left, I opened my phone and deleted the screenshot of Dahlia's old future post from the hidden folder in my mind where I kept things I could never prove. I did not need it anymore. The real evidence, the living evidence, was my own name still enrolled for spring. By spring, I was living in a small single on the 3rd floor of dormitory A, where the radiators still clanged, the windows still faced brick, and nobody entered without knocking. I made friends slowly. Real ones, not the kind who demanded immediate intimacy as proof of loyalty. Kira became one. A quiet engineering student named Noor became another after she admitted she had believed Dahlia at first because Dahlia made cruelty sound like mental health language. That's how she got us, Noor said one night while we studied in the lounge. She used words we were afraid to question. I thought about that for a long time. In my first life, I had blamed myself for not defending against lies. In this one, I learned some lies are designed to punish defense itself. If you deny them, you seem guilty. If you ignore them, they spread. If you cry, you are unstable. If you stay calm, you are cold. The only escape is evidence, timing, and refusing to become their script. The scholarship ceremony came in May. In my first life, Dahlia had stood on stage in a white dress accepting the Community Leadership Medal while I watched the live stream from a warehouse break room, my hands smelling of cardboard and industrial cleaner. This time, her name was not in the program. Mine was. Not for leadership. Not for resilience. Thank God. Universities love turning wounds into decorations. I received the Eastmere Academic Distinction Award for my research essay on due process in private institutions, an essay I wrote after realizing systems are only as fair as the people forced to use them correctly. When I walked across the stage, I saw my mother in the front row wiping her eyes with a tissue she had brought from home because she did not trust fancy napkins. I saw Professor Imani smiling. I saw Alma standing at the back with her arms crossed, pretending she had only come because residence directors attend everything. For 1 second, beneath the stage lights, I thought of Dahlia's post from the future that no longer existed. Be kind. You never know what someone is going through. She had been right, accidentally. You never know what someone has survived before they learn to stop begging cruel people for mercy. After the ceremony, a first-year girl approached me outside the auditorium. She had nervous hands and a dorm lanyard twisted around her fingers. "Can I ask you something weird?" she said. I almost said no because peace had made me protective of quiet, but something in her face stopped me. She told me her roommates had started freezing her out, not badly, not yet, but enough that she felt crazy for noticing. They moved things. They joked when she entered. They told her she was too sensitive. They had a group chat without her. "I don't want to make it bigger than it is," she whispered. That sentence felt like a key turning in an old lock. I told her to write dates. Photograph her space. Save messages. Tell one adult early, before she needed them urgently. Do not threaten. Do not announce. Do not wait for the final blow to prove the first cut happened. She nodded slowly, like someone receiving instructions for a fire drill she hoped never to use. Before she left, she asked, "How did you know to move out?" I looked across the lawn at students laughing under new leaves, the campus bright and harmless in the way dangerous places can look after danger is removed. "Because staying quiet is not the same as staying put," I said. "And leaving early is not losing." Sometimes, even in this better life, I wake before dawn convinced I am back in room 418. My hand reaches for my phone. My ears search for whispers. My chest tightens, expecting the week to begin again. Lipstick, camera, bracelet, answer keys, soft voices, Friday board script. Then the radiator bangs in dormitory A, ugly and faithful, and I remember where I am. The girls who ice me are gone. The room they used as a weapon is somebody else's now. My scholarship is intact. My mother answers when I call. My name remains on university records without an asterisk beside it. I did not destroy them by becoming crueler than they were. I destroyed their plan by leaving before they could decorate the cage and call it community. 1 year later, the door to my room still closes with the same soft click, and I still appreciate that sound more than any applause I have ever received. A closed door can be a boundary. A packed suitcase can be a beginning. A girl leaving before the ambush is not running away from her life. Sometimes she is arriving in it before the liars notice the stage is empty. If this were the kind of story Dahlia liked to tell, it would end with forgiveness photographed in good lighting. It would end with me saying the girls taught me strength, or that pain made me grateful, or that everything happened for a reason. I do not believe that. Some things happen because people choose harm and expect politeness to protect them from consequence. Some rooms are cold because someone turned down the heat. Some girls do not need more understanding. They need locked doors, revoked access cards, and a panel that finally reads the group chat properly. My rebirth did not make me noble. It made me early. Early to pack. Early to record. Early to report. Early to step outside the circle before it tightened. By Friday, they were expelled, suspended, barred, escorted out under the same fluorescent lights where they had planned to watch me break. And I, the girl they said did not belong, slept that night in a room with no hidden cameras, no lipstick on the mirror, and no one pretending silence was friendship.